Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate, the League One podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by my regular guests, Jake Tonge from the Stacey West podcast and Ed Walker from the D3D. I've done it again.
You could do D3. It's just D3 for this, can't you? You don't have to
Why
worry about
do
Division
it
4 with
D3?
this.
I mean, we can't retake, so we're just going to have to ply through. D3, D4 football podcast. Go check out both those things. But ahead of the Devon Derby on Saturday, I'm delighted to welcome Joe Bell from Argyle Life and Tom Picillo from the Greciancast. Good evening to you, gents. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to start with you, Tom, because Exeter City are going to be in League One next season, realistically. So this is really the last really meaningful sort of event of the season, a chance to get one over your fierce rivals. Fans must be up for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all up for it. I mean, I suppose, we're playing for less than Argyle are at the moment. And I mean, I'll take that, to be honest. You know, at this point in the season, if you said that it would be, 12th with however many games to play, 5 games, I think it is, 53 points, it's way over the margin that would normally keep you up. So, we're very happy with that. And I suppose, we've just got a few big games to go. And one of them is against those lot down the road, Argyle. Looking forward to it, to say the least. We've got a few other big games, of course, coming up in April. We've got Sheffield Wednesday away as well, which will be a great away day. Planning on going to that one. So, lots to play for, especially on Saturday.
Joe, how are you feeling about this one from an Argyle perspective? Because there's been seasons in the past, like I think it was the 15-16 season where losing to Exeter kind of derailed you, because the first time you played them that season at home park, you were top of the league at the point you played them, and then the second time I think you lost in sort of late March, was it? And then sort of struggled, couldn't quite get over the line from then on, and ended up losing the playoff final to Wimbledon. So, you know, how important is it to kind of take that monkey off your back, get the win at St James's Park, and really give you that bit of momentum going into the home straight?
It's probably not the game any of us wanted after Monday, if truth be told. I mean, as if pressure wasn't high enough to have to go to probably the most hostile atmosphere they're going to play in all season, off the back of a thumping at home. It's not ideal. How are we feeling? I suppose there's probably an air of trepidation about it, just off the back of Monday's performance. But we have to play them away at some point, Gab. I'd rather play them off the back of 2 defeats than off the back of them beating Barnsley. So I'm going to take that as a little positive, I suppose. But it's a massive game, isn't it? Can't play it down. I don't know why anyone would want to play it down.
Do you think, I mean, Tom, Joe mentioned the back-to-back defeats there for Exeter. Do you think form is a factor in the derby games, or do you believe in the cliche that it kind of goes out the window?
Yeah, it's that cliche, isn't it? Form goes out the window. I'm not so sure, to be honest. I think form comes into it to an extent. I think naturally Argyle will come in as favourites after the position they find themselves in. But in many ways, I don't think that's a bad position for us to be in. I think that obviously all of the pressure is on Plymouth, and we're just there to upset the party. And I think
Mind games already.
It's not wrong, though. It's not wrong.
I mean, how important is this game for Gary Caldwell, Tom? Because I think we can all agree he's done a pretty steady to good job so far at Exeter City. I think sometimes it's difficult coming into a club where things are already going well, but he seems to have been able to keep the good elements of what's there whilst also putting his own stamp on this team. But I think if there's a good competitive performance in the game at home park earlier in the season, but if he could get his side putting in a great performance against Argyle at St James's Park, and possibly get a result or even win the game, that would go a long way to making him popular with the locals, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and we should have won that game back on Halloween. I think the night was. We were much the better side on the day. Just so happened that after that Barley Mumba volley went into the back of the net, Plymouth sort of had the game at that point. So we were the better side on the day, and we definitely should have won. In terms of Gary, though, I think that this will obviously be a defining moment if he can get the better of Argyle on Saturday. I think that we can do it, and I think that he's proven that he's a manager who can work in these big games and get points out of them. You know, we very nearly beat Sheffield Wednesday back on, was it just before Boxing Day, I think it was early December, and obviously we managed to beat Barnsley as well. So we've taken points off of some big sides this year, and well, I mean, don't want to say Plymouth's a big side, but they're certainly performing well.
I quite enjoyed Joe keeping his eyebrows down then when you were talking about the game. Since we've got a disagreement between the two down the bottom here.
Shall we not put these two up, Gab?
Not sure about better side, but we'll let him have his moment.
getting a bit salty now. I want to ask you, Joe, about do you sort of fear Exeter a little bit, the sort of in the sense that, as Tom mentioned, the pressure is all on Argyle, and yet I think there's a pretty good chance that Exeter, with their two up top, their aggressive style of play with Archie Collins in midfield and high wing backs, the possibility for Exeter with that raucous home support and the atmosphere they can generate to really pen Argyle in. And if it's a tough first half, you kind of wonder, can Argyle at what point are Argyle going to have some room to breathe into the game?
Don't need to ask you what your prediction is then, Gab, do I?
I'm not.
I've already got that idea from that. Yeah,
I think it might be a draw.
I actually think draw as well, to be honest. But
yeah.
In all fairness, before I'm sure you're going to ask us our predictions in a bit, but I think Argyle probably fear Exeter at any time of the year, let alone at this time of the year when they have relatively nothing to play for. And as you say, the pressure is all on Argyle. There's 6 games to go. Ipswich are breathing down our necks. Barnsley are breathing down our necks. We're trying to get ahead of Sheffield Wednesday, although that's still miraculously somehow in our hands. It's a massive game. It's a horrible place to go, Gab, as an Argyle fan. It really is. There's some horrible memories there. There are some great memories. The 3-1, the late winner for Ian Stonebridge all those years ago. There are some fantastic memories for Argyle there, but in recent times, it's an absolute graveyard. The 4-0 drubbing in 2019, the Ollie Watkins derby, there was a 3-1 battering in there as well, where we only scored a free kick. It's just,
yeah.
We couldn't have asked for a worse game, in my opinion. There are some people. The flip side to it is there are a lot of people who'll be looking at it thinking, well, it's the perfect game to get them back on track. Big derby, everything's on the line. They're going to have to perform at their best, but I can't see it. I'm really anxious for it.
You could also look at it as an opportunity, Joe, and this is where I will spin it slightly more favourably for Argyle to show that I'm not biased in favour of Exeter or anything.
He's a Torquay fan, really. That's his preference.
But no, I think I feel like, is there a sense of laying the ghost to rest in terms of that? Like when England beat Germany, for example, at the last World Cup, and it was like Germany always seemed to beat England, and there was always that sort of nightmare of losing on penalties, and then England beat Germany when they had a better squad than them, and they just went and won. If Argyle go to St James's Park and win that game, that must give you a huge amount of belief going into the rest of the season as well, though.
Yeah, I mean, it'll work two ways, won't it? It's similar to the pizza final last Sunday. It was always going to work one or two ways. It was either going to be a catalyst for the rest of the season, or some demons may come to the surface. Unfortunately, it seems to have been the latter than the former. But you're right. It does give them an opportunity to use it as a springboard. I know Schumacher seems to think it's the perfect game for the group. He knows them better than I do. But they are going to have to be at it from minute one. It's pointless going there looking for anything else. If they go there and try and contain Exeter in the first 10 minutes and then we'll just pass it around and we'll get into the game, that ain't going to happen, because they've got a point to prove after October, when apparently they were the better side. So they've got to put. They've got to lay their own ghost to rest, haven't they, from that? So it's set up to be a fantastic 0-0.
Could well be. I think it might be a 1-1 draw. But coming to you, Tom, I want to talk to you about sort of the wider perspective for Exeter City, and we've I suppose we've talked about this a little bit off air, which is the what's the summer looking like for Exeter City? Because on the one hand, you're looking at the losses of 4 or 5 key players likely to be in the offing. On the other hand, you look at the fact that Caldwell has put his stamp on this team, the fact that you know what a Gary Caldwell Exeter City looks like, the fact that you know you've got a really good head of recruitment in Marcus Flitcroft, the fact that it's such a well-run club with people with the right intentions at heart. How do you kind of balance those two sort of feelings as an Exeter City fan?
Yeah, it's difficult. We have spoken off air. We said, who are we going to lose in the summer? Looks likely that Josh Key, Archie Collins will both be off. Obviously, Jay Stansfield will return to Fulham. Whether we get him back, I wouldn't be so sure. I think he'll probably end up in the Championship next year, which I think he totally deserves. But I mean, in terms of the potential to replace those guys, then we've already got players coming through. I mean, Sonny Cox made his first league start on Saturday. A brilliant
Midfielder, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he's a fantastic striker.
Oh, he's
Sonny
striker.
Cox. Yeah, sorry, yeah. 8 goals in 20 games on loan at Bath over the past few months. So he's done well there. He'll come into the first team, but also we'll complement those with signings. And Gary and Marcus have already shown that they're brilliant at working the transfer market. So I think that we'll be fine in terms of recruitment for next summer. Hopefully we don't lose too many players, but I think that we'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. But I suppose, you ideally you'd want to limit the departures to just 2 or 3 players, because sometimes if you lose too many good players simultaneously, even with a good recruitment team, that can make it a difficult rebuild, because
It makes you think back to Crewe 2 years ago, doesn't it, Gab? The situation they had. And if something like that happens to Exeter, it can hit you hard, definitely losing that many players in such a short space of time.
I think Exeter have a smarter structure than Crewe, don't get me wrong, but I think that it's still going to bring different challenges, and I think that's where I'd kind of have a bit of sort of uncertainty.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there, Gab, and I think that you make a good point as well about Crewe. I think that you can draw a few sort of similarities there. I would say that we've got maybe a more sustainable structure than Crewe ever did. I think that we've got a continuous conveyor belt of talent, whereas they had a bit of a golden generation maybe at Crewe. So I think that in that respect, we're maybe a little bit different. I think that in terms of having a squad next year that's capable of staying up, I don't think that's really going to be a question.
Who's your core then for next season, Tom?
Good question, really. Good question.
You thinking Hartridge and Diabate stay put?
Well, yeah, I think Hartridge and Diabate both stay. Obviously, Diabate's out of the side at the moment from an injury, but I mean, to be honest, he's kind of struggled to get into the squad anyway, so I think he'll be a certain one for next year. I suppose you look at the midfield, don't you? And if Archie Collins is off, then you're going to have to replace him. We've got Kevin McDonald, but at the moment we're quite liking playing all 3 of them together along with Harry Kite. Kite will stay, so he'll be a part of the furniture. So
Kite's more of a box-to-box type than Collins, who's more of a sitter and a conductor, I suppose, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose questioning what the core is, I don't know. Pierce Sweeney will obviously still be here. Will Ameson signed in January. So we've got a good core of players, I suppose. It might look slightly different with a few changes, but I think overall we're just going to end up having a team that is more to Gary's liking, replacing some of Matt Taylor's old favourites.
Yeah, Joe, if you can bear it from an outside perspective, do you have a feeling on how Exeter have done and how well they've stepped up to League One?
Why have you asked an Argyle fan to comment on how good a season Exeter have
You
had?
knew how that was going to end, Gab. Why'd you do it?
In all seriousness, whether or not I should admit this or not, I was actually there the night that Exeter won promotion back to League One. I was one of the 86 Barrow fans in the away end. I went to meet Taylor, who came down from Barrow for the night. And for for the first half, I was really enjoying the evening after they scored directly from a throw-in. And then second half, obviously, City ploughed through them, really. That night, I sort of saw that they had a good spine to the team. They needed to add a bit of quality. I think they've done that through the season. I think McDonald's obviously been a very good acquisition. Who knew he had such a good goal scoring record? So he's been a very strong addition. I didn't expect them to be where they are, Gab. Maybe that's down to one or two teams underperforming in the division, or
Yeah, I
whether or
said
not they're
19th
just
actually before the season, and a lot of people would have had Exeter down when they didn't recruit anyone for much of the summer. So
I thought they'd be lower third. I hoped they'd been bottom four, but that was never going to happen. So yeah, look, they've had a strong season, and as Tom said at the start, they're probably relieved that they're going into this game with it, using the horrible football term, as a free hit, with very little pressure on them other than the pressure from the fan base. So they've had a strong season. I hope it does go the way that Crewe went, though.
Well, we'll have to see on that one. But Tom, just to kind of finish off on Exeter with you, you've obviously proved a lot of people wrong. I think a lot of people would have had Exeter in the bottom six this season, and a lot of people going down as well. Although I thought you'd just about stay up, but. Yeah, you kind of excited about the derby and the future ahead based on the last couple of seasons for the club.
Yeah, I think so. And just comparing us, I suppose, to the other sides that were promoted. I mean, Forest Green beat us to the league title last year. Can't forget that. And I know that was kind of our own doing after losing to Port Vale on the last day of the season. But I mean, if you look at what Forest Green have done over the course of the season, even back in the summer, losing their two wing backs, Nicky Cadden, Kane Wilson, it was always going to go the way of a relegation fight. And in the end, it's not really much of a fight. You can't afford to lose two players that are so integral to your side, and I don't think that we really did over the summer. So I think that's what we did. Really, we kept a core group of players, and hopefully that's something that we can repeat over the course of next summer as well.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, absolutely love the Greciancast. I think everyone should go check it out. So just give us a plug before you go to where people can find you and what you do.
Absolutely. We're actually recording an episode just after this. We're previewing the derby. We're the Greciancast, available on Spotify or your other podcast platforms. And hopefully we'll get a few new listeners off the back of this.
Yeah, let's hope so. Thanks so much, Tom. Really appreciate your time, mate.
Perfect. Cheers, Gav. Cheers.
Thanks. I want to move this into an automatic promotion conversation now. Can bring in Dan Fudge from the Wednesday week. How are you, Dan?
How's it going, Gab? You all right? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Loud and clear. Thanks for joining us. Just wondering, after that 3-0 win over Accrington Stanley, which ended a 5-game winless streak, how are you feeling about your chances? Because you're back top of the league, albeit having played more games than Ipswich and Plymouth Argyle.
I've no idea. Given the last 5-6 weeks, I've no idea how we're going to do. The Argyle fella there will go, yeah, we probably effed it and it's all falling to bits and all the rest of it. And then we decided to come up and proper Sheffield Wednesday it up, where we give ourselves that sliver of hope, just like we did before we went down from the Championship, and then lost it on the last game of the season to Derby County. So, who knows? We don't know what's happening anymore. We thought we were going to run away with it. We had this huge buffer. We had games in hand. It was all going swimmingly. We had unbeaten runs. Everybody's cool in the gang, and then we've got one of the worst form in the league. This league's mental.
I mean, I think part of that's Lincoln City are responsible for that, Jake, because you seem to be taking points off all the big hitters. What have you made of the teams Lincoln have faced?
Pretty good. The standard's been pretty high at the top end of League One, albeit the fact that we've consistently taken points off pretty much all of them throughout the course of the season.
Such a weird team. I just don't understand you at all.
Do you know what it is? And I think we kind of showed it on Good Friday, actually, that we can beat a team lower down the table. And if we can do that on a more consistent basis, then we will be, looking at where Pompey and maybe Bolton and those sort of teams are maybe next year, depending on if we can do it consistently. But, I think, if I'm honest, over the two games, I think Wednesday, out of the two teams that we've got here, were the better side. They gave us a better game. At Hillsborough, they were pretty poor, but at Sincil Bank, I thought first 20 minutes or so they looked really good. They had buyers in the team that day, though, so they looked a lot stronger. But Yeah, I think it's an exciting race though, for sure. I mean, these guys probably can't stand it, but from a neutral and we've still got Barnsley to go, so we can still derail another season, which would be fantastic. So, yeah, it's been real high quality and really enjoyable to watch, and yeah, especially when you're picking points up against all the big boys as well, and get to rub it in their faces. Sorry, boys.
Absolutely. But we'll I think that's a really interesting point that Jake made there in terms of the loss of George Byers, because, you know, I would have very happily put George Byers in my League One team of the season. He would be one of the first names on the team sheet. But you look at it, he's only played half the games, or started only half the games. So, I mean, that's a real, that must be really frustrating for Wednesday. Someone that's been so influential on this team hasn't been able to play as often as you'd have liked.
Yeah, there's been a bit of an issue with it, as daft as it sounds, Gab. So at the start of the season, last season, when Lincoln took points off us again, during last season, we had a bit of a dearth in midfield, and Darren Moore's recruitment's been outstanding. If there's anything that, you know, Darren Moore's been really good at, it's who to get. And so we had these slew of centre midfielders come in. George Byers, Dennis Adeniran, Fizeo Della Bashir, who had been there a couple of years. So we should have been able to just like for like swaps if people got injured and all the rest of it. But during that 23 game streak, it became very apparent that Will Volks, Barry Bannon, and George Byers were the three main guys. And then during that slow period that we're recently on, that slump, the Adeniran, FDB, and the other one whose name Backinson. There's so many. They've all had their opportunity to shine, and they've just dropped the ball. They've just not performed. And then fortunately on Bank Holiday Monday, Adeniran got a couple of goals that got him back in contention for that spot that's overwhelmingly left by George Byers. But I think there's a case of tinkering, but then now, yeah, he's sustained a pretty tough injury, and now we're all sat there hoping that Adeniran steps up like we thought he was going to 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, coming to you, Joe, how frustrating is it when you have a player that's so influential on your team that then gets injured for a lengthy period of time? Because you had that with Big Mike Cooper, the goalkeeper, who was absolutely outstanding and crucial to Argyle being where they were. I think Finn Azaz had some time out. Obviously, lost one or two others as well. So, how frustrating is it in terms of knocking the rhythm and the synergy of the team?
Massively. Dan obviously knows it from losing Byers and Windass being out the side now. I mean, as you say, through this season, we've had periods where obviously Cooper's unavailable. Then we've had periods where Zaz has been out long term, Scar's been out long term, Galloway's been out most of the season, Bolton's been out most of the season, Connor Grant's been out most of this season, Mumba's now on the sidelines. Danny Mayor's had time to one side, Niall Ennis has had time to one side. Gillespie's had time to one side.
Are you better off listing the players who haven't had time out? Where this is going.
Jordan Houghton's been remarkably fit. Yeah, it's strange, Gab, isn't it? And it can really knock aside. And when you're talking there specifically about Michael Cooper, when you have got the best keeper in the division, and the side are so settled, knowing that he's behind the back line, and then all of a sudden somebody else has to go in there, it does take time.
And Dan Scar's injury as well. I don't think you can underestimate that as well for the aerial dominance.
In the same game, Gab, we lost the pair of them in the space of 20 minutes at Hillsborough. Unbelievable. How Windass never saw red for the challenge on Cooper is another thing. But yeah, I mean, you're right in what you're saying. And, you know, losing Cooper was massive, and they are still adjusting to life with Callum Burton in goal. But I mean, the obvious other one is Whittaker. Losing Morgan Whittaker at the start of January, because he made us tick going forward. And at the same time, we had Azaz out, so we play with two tens in behind the striker. And you know, in the space of 24 hours, the two who'd started most of the games this year were gone. Azaz was out through injury already, and then obviously you take Whittaker away. So we've had plenty to deal with, but we're still up there. So.
Still up there. Well, I've wound you up by putting you up with an Exeter City fan, Joe. I'm also going to bring in Bolton Wanderers fan Colin.
It's just one kick after another now, isn't it?
Looking all right, yeah. Are we well?
We're getting on a Peterborough fan next, Gab. Is that what we got after this?
It's only the pizza. It's all right.
We got a Lincoln fan on here who battered us at the weekend. We got a Wednesday fan on here who keeps taking our top spot, and now you're bringing a Bolton fan on who humiliated us at Wembley.
I'm an Exeter fan. I mean, it's relentless, isn't it?
I forgot all about that final, actually, to be honest with you. So I won't.
Before we go any further, Gab, and just in case someone else mentions it, last time me and Cole were on this podcast, I made a big point of the fact that Bolton hadn't scored past us all season going into the final.
That lasted 10 minutes. Nice. Well done.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Well, we thought it would be a good idea to get Colin before Joe leaves us. So just to make sure that the timing's right. But listen, Joe, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
No worries,
just before you go, just talk to us about Argyle Life and what you're doing with it.
Yeah, it's going really well. Obviously, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the usual places. Weekly pods once a week. Obviously, this week we had a double header. Spent most of the game waxing lyrical about the Morecambe game because we didn't want to talk about Monday. But yeah, go ahead and catch us out, and hopefully, all being well, we're releasing a happy pod on Monday this week, talking about a Derby win. Otherwise, we might be having adverts for the Samaritans halfway through.
And just one final thing from me. Do you think Argyle get top 2?
Yes, I do. It's pointless me believing anything other than
who, Joe? Who do you think you're gonna?
A team in blue. Say a team in blue. You'll get away with it.
I do think it will be Ipswich. I do think it will be us on Wednesday that go up. I'm hinging on all this basis on the week between the 22nd and the 29th when we're at home to Cambridge, Bristol Rovers and Burton. All 3 games at home. But on the Tuesday night, we play Bristol Rovers. Ipswich have to go to Barnsley. And that's the games in hand that we've got on Wednesday. So
I would love it if they beat them.
Ipswich have got to go to Barnsley and Peterborough, by the way. So I think if they get 3 to 4 points from those two, I think that's a good return from them. But I think that's probably a good thing for Sheffield Wednesday and Argyle.
Performances haven't been great recently, but I still think we've just about got enough credit in the bank.
I've just clocked that Burton have got all 4 of these teams here: Lincoln, Bolton, Wednesday, and Argyle before the end of this month. And now I'm not looking forward to anything anymore for the rest of the season. Oh.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Joe, thanks so much for your time and all the best.
Yeah, cheers, gents.
See you in about 6 weeks at Wembley, Joe, yeah?
No comment. Gab, have me on after a win next time, all right?
Okay, I'll try my best, mate.
See you later.
That's his last appearance of the season, then.
Cheers, Joe. I want to come to you, Cole, for a neutral perspective on the automatic promotion race. I mean, if you had to pick 2 teams from Ipswich, Argyle, and Sheffield Wednesday, who would you go for?
I think I need to remove recency bias away from the equation because I think obviously that tends to play a part in a lot of our thinking when it comes to how teams are performing, whatnot. I'm going to look at it from who I thought were the better teams coming to our place during the course of the season. And I'd probably say that my 2 would be Ipswich and Sheffield Wednesday for the top 2. Wednesday, when they came to our place, they scored 2 quick goals. We were probably on top, probably should have scored before they scored their first. Conor Bradley missed a 1-on-1, tried to chip the keeper, it didn't go in. I think if I go in, it's probably a different game. Ipswich came to our place, it did look good. But when they came, we played a lot of games in very quick succession. So I think we were a bit dead on our feet. But having said that, both of them 2 teams were better than Plymouth when they rocked up at our place, who sat all men behind the ball and started wasting every opportunity and time and minute possible. So that's kind of my assessment on it. I have been to Wednesday as well earlier on in the season. A few weeks ago, which I thought was quite a good performance from our perspective, but Wednesday still looked good. And Ipswich right at the beginning of the season, which is hard to say because it was the first game of the season. I've rambled a bit, but yeah, I think Ipswich and Wednesday are my 2 choices.
Colin, sorry, Gab, I appreciate this is your show. I don't normally get to speak to this lot, so I'm going to just ask a few questions. Colin, your Do you feel that? I mean, Plymouth have been romping away with it the entire season, and if they don't get automatic promotion, and now Joe's gone, I can say it out loud. That like it would be a bit of a travesty if they didn't go up.
Absolutely.
But do you feel like they don't have the depth to take it? I mean, we you know, our squad specifically has got quite an embarrassment of riches on paper. There's that phrase, but I feel like Plymouth might fall away a little bit. And as daft as it sounds, I don't fancy anybody outside yourselves and Barnsley to tear up those playoffs. You know, if it falls right, that's who I pick in the final.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's difficult because Plymouth have done very, very well this season, and with the resources they have compared to the likes of Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich, you know, they've done phenomenally well, haven't they? And I think sometimes you can be a little bit swayed towards the names as well. Obviously, Sheffield Wednesday, Ipswich Town, and little old Plymouth, so to speak. But I do. The squad depth obviously plays a massive part on it. And before I joined, I listened to the last 5 minutes before I came on, and obviously we're going through the amount of injuries that they've had as well, and obviously that's played its toll on them. Yeah, it's a difficult one. But yeah, I think we should try and stay away from the fact that you know, Wednesday and Ipswich are, you know, competing with them, because I do think they've done very well, given, with all due respect, who they are.
You guys will have seen that the obviously the Manager of the Year shortlist is out. It's the top 3, so it's Darren Moore, it's Kieran McKenna, and it's Schumacher. For me, it's Schumacher. I know you can question the shortlist, but for me, Schumacher's the pick out of the 3. Just to say that Argyle have been spending the season competing with them.
Absolutely,
Dan might have something to say about that, but that's just my feeling.
Darren Moore's not won one Manager of the Month award at all. So like,
who cares about those, Dan?
If he just comes in and goes, "I'll take the big one, lads. Cheers, see you later." You know what I mean?
For me, I think Sheffield Wednesday for a long time have got by on the strength in depth and individual quality, and I do feel like the form since the injuries have occurred have perhaps exposed maybe a limitation in Darren Moore's coaching ability, because if I was to compare Sheffield Wednesday and Barnsley, for example, watching both those sides, I think Sheffield Wednesday are able to change a game by making one substitution and flipping a game on its head. Barnsley, I see clear patterns of play. I see relationships running through the team. I see a synergy. I see an identity. I don't really see that with Sheffield Wednesday. And for me, I think if the Owls do get over the line, I think it's going to be on the depth and the individual quality, but not necessarily the quality of the coaching.
I think you might be right. I mean, you know, Darren Moore's come under a serious amount of flack for not making his changes quick enough. Like there was one game we played a few weeks ago at Cheltenham when it absolutely tanked it down, and Backinson was absolutely stinking the joint up, but still gave him 20 minutes in the second half anyway. And you're kind of like, Darren, come on, man. You can see the same thing we can. Yeah, you're right. Maybe because we've got the opportunity to have, like I said before, on paper, like for like swaps, maybe with the exception of players like Bannon. You know, we do have that opportunity to grind out a result when someone's been defending on their last legs for 70 minutes, and then we'll go, all right, let's swap this geezer in for this one. You know what I mean?
Like MK, Dan, I was at the MK Dons game back in February. I thought you were actually really poor against them in the first half. I didn't think they were great either, to be totally honest. But then, second half, Will Veltz came off about 10 minutes into the second half. Lee Gregory came on. All of a sudden, the two up top makes it a completely different game. And then you bring in, you know, Marvin Johnson goes up a level. George Byers goes up a level. Barry, you know, all these players, it just completely changed the game, and you end up scoring 4 goals. But I think that, you know, I saw enough in the first half of that game and parts of the second to suggest, you know, I'm just not sold on it. And I do wonder about, if Sheffield Wednesday do get into the Championship, how far is Darren Moore going to take this team? And I listen, lovely bloke. He's definitely a great person, community values, somebody I want representing my club. But as a coach, I think there's better.
I don't think there's many Sheffield Wednesday fans that would. God, I nearly said Sheffield. Then I was going to get creamed all over the internet for 5 minutes. Then, but yeah, I don't think there's many Sheffield Wednesday fans that would disagree with that. Obviously, my podcast colleague Stevie is a huge Darren Moore advocate, and he's not had the opportunity to prove his mettle really. I mean, he had a stint at West Brom, didn't he, at a higher level? But I don't know. I truly don't know. But what I do know is that if there's any players that are coming in, I trust Darren more implicitly to make sure that it's the correct players we need for the system. Now, the system is something that kind of winds me up because we sit here going, we're Sheffield Wednesday, we're all right, we're only down here because we cheated a couple of years ago. We'll get straight out of this league. And then we've still had to play 5-3-2, which, you know what I mean? Which is a bit like, oh, we're going to have to defend our way out this league a little bit, which is a bit frustrating. Yeah,
for sure. What do you make of it all, Ed?
Of the situation with Wednesday? I'm trying to... What can I say that hasn't already been said? I mean, you and Dan have covered that quite well there. Yeah. On the 5-3-2 thing, Dan, in my head, my perception is it's quite high wing backs anyway, so it's not really it's kind of more the defensive three, and maybe you've got Johnson or maybe Palmer, whoever is deployed out wide, perhaps more advanced, or is that different to your feeling?
I mean, they are attacking fullbacks, as it were, and we do play three at the back. I mean, Johnson and Palmer have had the season of their lives, and I know there's going to be a few of my fellow podcasters now laughing at me because I've been doing this show a long time, and Liam Palmer's played for us for a long time, and I've been up and down more than a pair of kangaroos in a mating season about Liam Palmer, but you know. This season he's done really well. He spent the summer doing some marathons and some charity running, some long distance running, and it's really changed his game. And I reckon he'll be knocking back on the international door next season if we're up in the Championship.
Scotland, isn't it? Scotland.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, well, we'll have to see about that one. I'm not quite sure that Liam Palmer's international class myself, but I can certainly see he's been a fantastic.
He's not international class, but we're talking about Scotland, like.
I was about to say that. Someone else took it.
Yeah, but I think even Scotland can have like long term. I mean, there's players like Ramsey, for example. Is it Calvin Ramsey, Scotland? Anyway, I'm sure there's right backs that Scotland have got that are sort of slightly more progressive options than Liam Palmer myself. That would kind of be my feeling on it. But I mean, I take your point. Great professional. Dan, lovely stuff with the Wednesday week. Before we let you go, just talk to us about what you do on the podcast and where people can find you.
We do a whopping 3 shows a week, which is now giving me a part-time job. We do three different things. On the Mondays, we do My Wednesday, where we get various fans coming on talking about their experiences with Sheffield Wednesday. We do our main show on a Wednesday, and then on a Friday, I'll talk to these reprobates or one of them about the upcoming fixture. So Ed will probably be in touch at some point.
Yeah, you looking forward to Saturday? Because I'll be honest, I'm not bothered.
I'm you know what? It's got to the point where I'm just kind of just looking forward to the results now. Like,
you've not got a good record at the Pirelli, though, have you, Dan?
Sorry, say again.
You've not got a good record at the Pirelli, though, have you?
They couldn't beat us in the Championship, and since it's been League One, they won all the games. So it's a bit different now.
They are. They're better when they're the league higher. We just turn up now, apparently, and anything can happen. It's just a roulette now, lads.
Interesting. See, I think Sheffield Wednesday coming to Burton will make the atmosphere at the Pirelli probably a bigger atmosphere. Like in the terrace behind the goal, I think they'll be quite vocal, I guess, because
we've been allocated 1,600 tickets or something, and there's been a meltdown on Twitter of people trying to find tickets because our fan base is, it's fairly loyal. Don't get me wrong, and that's probably why we get a bit chopsy because we've paid our money and we've not really been rewarded with anything in the last 25 years for still turning up. So the fact that we're singing and dancing about getting to the top of the league, I can see why some are really still disgruntled about it. But it's usually them of a certain age that remember us being in the Premier League of Nilsson, Sheridan, Wadland, Hurst. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Final question from me then, Dan. Do Sheffield Wednesday get top 2?
Yeah.
Yes, they do. Brilliant. All right, well, we'll leave it there then. Thanks so much, Dan. Everyone go check out the Wednesday week, and I'm sure we'll see you again very soon, Dan.
My pleasure. See you later.
Cheers, mate. Coming to you then, Carl, in terms of the playoff scramble with Bolton Wanderers, you obviously got that great memory at Wembley, going back there for the first time since, for about 11 years. And obviously that was great. But in terms of the league form, there's a little bit of cause for concern. I think it's 1 win in 6 or something about that. 1-1 draw with Cambridge United. Not a great performance. A
No.
little bit of concern.
That was quite smash and grab though from Cambridge, wasn't it? From my perception.
Well,
No,
there's Colin.
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, to be fair to them, and I think they actually probably deserved a draw because they came to our place, and unlike a lot of teams, they actually tried a little bit and tried to go at us a little bit, and tactically they got it pretty spot on. So I think we had a lot of possession, but we always have a lot of possession. You know, that's just the way Ian Evatt sets up, and a lot of teams struggle to get the ball off us or let us have the ball, shall we say? But I think. We didn't finish the chances that we had. Yes, Dion Charles hits the post just before or just after we score our first
goal. It was an offside goal as well, wasn't there?
It was an offside goal in the first half, which was somewhat contentious. But I'm at the other side of the stadium, so I couldn't quite tell. But yeah, I mean, performance-wise, I think Cambridge probably deserved something from the game. I'm being completely transparent with you. In terms of our overall form, yes, we've not won many in recent weeks, but up until we played Sheffield Wednesday and managed to get a draw at Hillsborough, we played a lot of games in quick succession, guys. So obviously that had a massive effect on us, with the cup run as well. Since then, I think we've drawn as well, and like I said, Sheffield Wednesday, we managed to pick up a win at Exeter. It's not as bad as what it's perceived in terms of form. I'm still quietly confident and that we'll get one of the playoff spots. I think it's probably out of us, Derby and Peterborough for the 5th and 6th.
Peterborough have come into it a lot more than I expected.
I was going to say, it feels to me like it's Bolton and Derby going head-to-head at the minute, and I'm more confident with you than I'm Derby at the moment.
Yeah, I think I am as well. To be honest with you, I think we've got the longevity within our squad as well. I think if you look beyond if you look beyond Derby's first 11, I think you might argue they're struggling a little bit strength and depth wise, and I think we've got that. Although having said that, we're missing Ricardo Santos for a short while. I think for a couple of weeks, which is a bit of a bummer. Owen Tall as well, who started very well.
There seems to be quite a mixed opinion on Luke and Bete. Cole, don't know what you're saying.
He's a young lad. He's struggling a little bit to adapt to the men's game. It's quite obvious he's got a lot of ability in terms of his pace. He reads the play pretty well for a young lad. He's committed, but I think from times he can be a little bit erratic. And when we're missing Rico alongside him, that stands out because what's happening is George Johnson's having to navigate into the centre back position and in place of Rico. And he's been out for a while as well. And
you got the setback of Owen Toole as well, haven't you, from Wembley?
Yeah, Owen Toole's been a great signing, and he's been a great defender. I think he's going to go on to have a really good career. I think he's just had his first international call up as well, and you can kind of tell he's got a lot about his game. So yeah, I mean, I didn't join the podcast obviously as early as you guys, but I listened to it before, and I heard some of the guys saying that we've got a lot of injuries, but we all have injuries. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
You can go on forever with that, can't you? It's just about managing the squad, and I think that's what Evatt tried to do on Monday against Cambridge as well. I think he tried to mix it up a little bit and start a few players that weren't necessarily for starters, if you want to call them that, and they didn't really impress enough, really, shall we say? So yeah, Dion Charles will definitely be starting on Saturday, shall we say?
Has Randall Williams kind of gone off the boil at the minute?
He's not really
at the moment.
Yeah, he's not really hit the ground running. I think what's happened there is we've signed him as a left wing back.
Yeah,
but that's probably because Declan John was struggling a little bit at the start early on in the season. But Declan's kind of rolled his sleeves up a little bit, and he's impressing in recent weeks. Hence why he got assist at Wembley, and I think he scored the other day as well. So yeah,
Daniel Lundulu, how's he getting on at Bolton? Because he had a bit of an indifferent spell up here as well.
Great question, Jay. Yeah, he initially, we played Derby away in his debut. He looked the part. Our press and what we expect from our centre forwards, as I'm sure all you gents will understand, it's a very intense way of playing for a forward. I think he struggled a little bit with that and picked up a little bit of a niggle just after the Derby game on his hamstring, so he was out for a few weeks. And since then, obviously, we signed Victor Adebayo as well, and obviously Dion Charles has been scoring. He's kind of struggled to get in, as well as Cameron Jerome as well. So there's competition for places, so he struggled a little bit. However, having said that, against Cambridge the other day, he did look sharp when he came on, so I am expecting him to have a quite a big say towards the end of the season.
Likes the goal at Wigan as well, so that'd be good for you.
Well, hopefully we'll pass. I'm not too interested in them, to be honest. Hopefully we'll go one way and they'll go the other, all being well.
We'll see. Jake, I think we've sort of agreed that it's likely to be 2 from 3 in terms of the playoffs in League One now. Which would be your two?
Based on this season, I've been very fortunate to have gone to every game, home and away.
Love it. Dedication, mate.
I think out of the three, the two that have impressed me the most, Peterborough are the one that stand out, obviously, for me.
They're the form team, aren't they?
They've beat us 3 and 4-0. They're fantastic going forward. Clark Harris, Mason Clark. You've got Jack Taylor bringing it up from midfield. Joe Ward was exceptional at wing back as well the day they came to Central Bank. Yeah. I think Peterborough, whilst they've obviously got their own troubles going on for next season, I think for this year they're definitely my pick to finish in there. And to be fair, I mean, we took 4 points off Derby, so Bolton actually impressed me a little bit more. I know we had a bit of a humdinger at Central Bank. It was a bit rough with Dapper Afalai and elbowing one of our lads, getting a bit of just caused a bit of a trend really, because we sort of dobbed Afalai in, and then Bristol Rovers went and did it to us, and then someone did it to Bristol Rovers. So
kind of worms.
Well, literally, and but to be honest, I think over the 2 games, Bolton have impressed me more. I'm not saying that because old matey's down there, but they've just got options. So many, you can think of the forward players that they've got. They can do so many different things. Daniel Lunderloo to hold the ball up, Dion Charles to get in.
You're talking positively about Darren Lunderloo.
I loved him. I absolutely loved him.
Oh, you were the one. I thought. I got it.
He was the one Lincoln fan who liked them.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay.
He was only a young lad though, Jake, when he was at Cecil Bank. Is that right? Yeah.
What was that, mate?
He was only a young lad when he was at your place, wasn't
he? First loanee out of Southampton. And so I quite liked him. I think he was energetic, held the ball up pretty well. Was playing in an awful team, to be fair. We were and I think when we signed him, you could see why we signed him, because he had all the right characteristics. He was big, he was strong, he was quick. He could finish. He had done at Southampton. He played for their first team a few times in the FA Cup. I think he even scored.
And in the Premier League. Came off the bench.
He scored against Shrewsbury, I think, in an FA Cup game as well. So in the half the division, we're sort of limbering up to sign him, and we managed to get him, and he was a bit of a flop, apart from one evening up in Wigan. But Bolton for me, they're impressive. I mean, at the rebar or the uniball or the tough sheet, whatever you want to call it nowadays. I think they got lucky that day with a penalty call that set them on the way, but they played us off the park probably for at least 45 minutes. So for me, Bolton just pipped Derby. I can think there'll only be 2 points in it, but if I'm going to give it to, and obviously Bolton have won the Pizza Cup, which as a team that have won it ourselves, we went on to finish in the playoffs after we won it. So it's a really good springboard, and Bolton will hopefully look to finish the same.
It won't do any harm, will it, Jake?
I just want to touch on Derby with Ed a little bit, though, because if we're both sort of agreeing that Bolton and Peterborough are the likeliest 2 of the 3 to get into the playoffs, that would obviously mean Derby missing out. And Ed, I think there'll be a section of Derby fans who are quite sort of philosophical about that because of the nature of this season, because the takeover happened so late in the summer, because it's kind of a club that's being rebuilt and they've got an opportunity to have a full summer ahead and build. But I think there's going to be a demographic of Derby fans that are actually feel a little bit disappointed at, they're playing at their lowest level in however many decades, and yet they're going to miss out on the top 6 if that happens. What are the consequences for Derby and Paul Warne?
I would hope not too much. I agree. I think there will be probably a mixed response. I feel like all the clubs at the top would have a mixed response if they were in Derby's position. There'd be, I'm sure, some Bolton fans, if they were to miss out, who would feel they're really confident with Ian Evatt going forwards, and there might well be some who look at it and go, maybe we need to change things to try and go over the line. And I don't think that would be the right opinion to have, certainly. I'd want to believe in Evatt going forwards. And I think like most Derby fans carry a lot of realism, realising exactly how difficult the season's been. Part of the problem maybe is that there was a period probably around the turn of the year where they looked absolutely phenomenal, and you were kind of wondering if they could push the automatics towards the end, and it's taken quite a drop off. And I think I'd look to the results. They've only won twice since the start of March, both away against Oxford and Forest Green Rovers. The amount of drop points they're getting at Pride Park is really starting to frustrate the fans, and naturally you would with a crowd that's what's going to be a really big crowd at the stadium that's got high expectations. Naturally, I think, because of the end of the season. So I would not look at it at all as a disaster if Derby do miss out. I think it's important to keep yourself grounded with that. But at the same time, I could definitely understand the disappointment of some fans if they were to finish outside that top six.
Yeah, I mean, we've had to take several steps back to look to go forward. And I think that's probably, like Ed rightly said, where they find themselves at the moment, isn't it, really?
I mean, Cole, throwing it forward for Bolton Wanderers, how confident are you that Ian Everett's long-term future is going to be at the Unibowl? Because let's say, hypothetically, Bolton get into the playoffs but miss out in the playoffs. There might be one or two championship opportunities, maybe a Reading or something like that.
I don't think I've ever seen his name circle around other jobs, though, compared to others.
It's funny you should say that, actually. And the two of you actually making reference to Reading and potential jobs is actually was touted, I think, at 16-1 to go to Reading today. I can't see it.
I'm not sure.
I would not go to Reading for Bolton.
I'm not sure I'd swap Bolton for Reading.
Not a chance.
But without sounding, I probably shouldn't say this probably on a live podcast, but that's only too big-headed. There aren't many clubs outside the top 6 of the Championship that I could see him leading.
No, I think he's fair to say that. I'd agree with him on that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we've sold for next season. We've sold almost 15,000 season tickets, and for next season we're in April already. We took 35,000 to Wembley.
24 against Cambridge, wasn't it?
Yeah, just short of 25. Yeah, against Cambridge. I mean, we're heading in the right direction, and I think he'd be silly to jump ship, and he certainly won't be getting any form of sacking or anything else.
I think I've said this before, Gab. I look at Ian Everett the same way I do Mark Robbins at Coventry and what Nathan Jones did at Luton, as someone who can take that club from the basement of the Football League up to the top level and potentially progress beyond there. And I really would hate to see Everett move on from anywhere else, because I think he's got a great thing going at Bolton Wanderers.
Unless it was a Premier League team dropping down, obviously, or
I don't think he's going to get a Premier League opportunity,
which isn't going to happen. Yeah,
no.
there aren't many. There aren't many clubs, are there, really?
That's interesting, because I think you put a lot of work. I mean, I suppose I'm just kind of exploring, because I think when you put it like that, I probably would be inclined to say, if I'm in Everett's shoes, I probably would take Bolton in League One over Reading in the Championship. But whereas I look at maybe a club like Barnsley, that I'm not maybe as confident in the club structurally, I think if I'm in Michael Duff's shoes, I probably would look at Championship opportunities if Barnsley don't go up. But I think you've got a real plan there. And do you feel like you've got the potential to get into the Premier League in 5 or 6 years?
You need a lot of investment, don't you? Let's be honest about it. In terms of the club statures, in the not too recent past, what it's achieved, where it's been, yeah, of course, there's a possibility. But I think the Championship's changed a lot even since we were last in it, and I think for us to break into that, that top, or certainly the automatic spots, is almost impossible.
But I mean, yeah, I agree on the automatic spots. But in recent years, we've seen Barnsley get into the playoffs. We've seen Huddersfield get into the playoffs. We've seen Luton. I think they're at Millwall this season.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah. Everett has said he has come off on the record and said that his aim would to take us back to the Premier League as him as manager, and people scoffed at that last season. And I think he shortly after saying we were the best team in the league, and we ended up finishing 8th.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that was a moment, wasn't it?
He's what's important to remember with Ian Everett is he's learning as a manager, and obviously he's still relatively young. I think he's just turned 40, or 41. So in managerial terms, he's learning, and we are seeing that evolution or Evert's-lution.
I tell you what, the other thing. Very good. The other thing, Ed hates these ones.
Sorry, Ed.
The other thing I sort of like about Everton, I would sort of put Duff into this equation as well, is that they've got elements of the kind of modern progressive style of management, which is, establish a clear style of play, and it's progressive and all the rest of it. And yet I also feel that Everton's got a slightly, is like there's a twinge of old school in there as well. There's a twinge of
there's something about Ever. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure how tall he is, but in my head he's 6'7". He's an absolute giant. When I see him in interviews, he seems to just tower over everybody else. And I don't know
it's
whether
big
that's because of
for
where they put the camera, but in my head, he's like 6'10" basketball player size compared to
I
everyone
think
else.
he must be
I
about
think
six foot
he's got to be a
three,
fairly
6'4".
decent size because he was a centre back, wasn't he, in his playing
Yeah,
days?
I've met him a couple of times, and I'm 6 foot, just short of 6 foot, well, 6'1", and he was above me. So like whenever that happens, I think he's a big fella.
I just picture him as a really towering figure, quite
He is.
intimidating. Actually, I'd say to some of the opposition players, and you can imagine when he gets a bit aggravated, it's quite a threatening situation if you're the fourth official and he's in your face.
Yeah, he finds himself in sticky situations because of that, actually, Ed. So it's a good point. In terms of him as kind of the old school element, Gab, you're right. Like, there's little things that he does. Like, if you watch us, the lads always run off at half time. He wants them back in the dressing room straight away. They turn up to each and every game away from home and at home in suits as well. So there are little things that he's kind of installing, that the old school mentality.
And I think a lot of modern coaches maybe miss that dimension to their sort of repertoire as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, he's an interesting one, and he is somebody you can kind of see.
I really like his character. I know it kind of rough neutrals up the other way that he can.
But you
get
sort
under
of
the
love
skin.
it.
He doesn't.
Manager, Ed.
It's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the thing, like, for me with Everton, I know he probably knows that people have opinions on him from a neutral perspective. He just doesn't care. It's like, I've got my team, I've got my players, I'm with my fans, I only care about them, let's just go forward and see what happens. And I really like that he's got that. He's not letting him get carried away with other people.
Exactly right. He knows he's got the backing of us, and obviously he's got a decent fan base behind him, and he doesn't really give two hoots what anybody thinks about him. You're spot on with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap things up, I do want to talk to Jake about Lincoln City, because after a 2-0 victory over Plymouth Argyle, we can't not talk about the Imps. We've messaged on our WhatsApp group about Lincoln City potentially being close to a side that can maybe have a decent push next season. Has that as performances against some of these top sides like Plymouth Argyle sort of made you feel a bit more confident about that sort of thing?
Do you know what I get is, Gab? I think it's actually the last 3 weeks, maybe. I've been really positive in performances. I think I've come on, Stephanie spoke to you guys about how I've been disappointed in the way that we haven't gone after teams, especially the attacking options that we did have at our disposal. I think in defeat at Fleetwood, we did it a lot more. Obviously, we've lost Jack Diamond since, due to one reason or another. And then ever since then, we've been fantastic on the front foot. Sheffield Wednesday away, we had a ropey 15, 20 minutes we conceded. But I think Wednesday, if I'd had the opportunity to say to Dan, I think after we scored, we looked like we were going to score again. And then Cheltenham on Good Friday, we scored. It was a bit iffy, but then we went on and went for the throat at Cheltenham and probably could have scored 4 or 5. And then obviously Easter Monday, the big result of the weekend from a Lincoln point of view. And I said to you, Gavin,
I didn't know you could counter attack like that.
It could have been 5. It would not look out of place had we scored 5 past them, because obviously we had the 2 goals. Regan had one disallowed for not sure what reason for. Luke had one disallowed, which he should have been onside for. Missed a really good opportunity. Danny Mandroy missed one. I just think the performances in the last 3 weeks have got me really excited for next year, because Mark's come out and said that he's got a lot more influence on the recruitment in the summer. So they're a fair way down the road with quite a few targets apparently about a summer move. And if they're going to be anything like Ethan Errahan, then I'm going to be very excited. I think it's obvious where we need to improve. I think Regan Poole will be gone in the Championship. I did try and persuade him on Monday after the game when I saw him, just to try and call him a little dancer, hope that
I'll probably put him off.
Try and start. Yeah, he'll be gone. Probably,
I don't want to talk to Jake after.
No, not him again.
If he's not in the Championship next year, then I'll be extremely worried. I think where we need to improve is the wide forward areas, and I think
Do you
we
think
have
it'll
a
be 3-4-3 next season, Jake, or 4-2-3-1?
Well, this is it, Gab, because we have obviously you've had that debate on Twitter with quite a few of our supporters. It looked like he was going to go 4 back, and then all of a sudden he's decided that this 3-4-3/3-5-2 combination is working really well for us at the moment. And if we can recruit some really good wing backs and wingers, then I don't see why we can't do it.
Or inside, wing backs and inside forwards.
And I think we have some good options at inside forward with Danny Mandroy. I think he's had a really good couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You've got to remember, like I said, with a couple of weeks ago as well. He's not had a rest in over 12 months. He had the Irish season, a bit like Toll was done at Bolton. They had the Irish season. They've come straight over to England. I mean, Toll came in January, if I'm right. Danny came at the start of the season, so Danny's then had the full English season as well to contend with. He's not had a break in well over.
He's had the full English.
He's had full English, yeah.
Probably not.
No wonder he's exhausted.
Oh, just please end this now.
I don't hear. Gab, it doesn't go wrong, Mio. So, but yeah.
Gab, can I ask Jake a question? Sorry, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
Jake, obviously, you mentioned that you've signed the right players. You're heading in the right direction in terms of potential playoff push next season. I've just jotted a question down for you.
Yeah.
Ooh,
who
would? I like that.
Yeah, who would you want to get rid of in terms of teams out of the division?
This is the point I make. If they lose those top 3 teams, that's half their points gone. Because they're the teams they can actually get points against.
I didn't mean it like that.
You can't do it against the bottom half sides, Jake. You can only do it against the top ones.
Who would I like? Who would I like to keep?
Or get rid of? Yeah,
I'd like to get rid of Bolton because we don't beat Bolton away, so you can clear off.
We can bugger off. Fair enough.
I like having Wednesday down here because I like winding the fans up. So I'll keep Wednesday down here. We always get someone against Ipswich, so I'd say Argyle, Bolton, and maybe Barnsley.
Not Peterborough, surely. Surely Peterborough.
I like Peterborough because
you've been beaten by the home and away.
Purely because we beat
they're more local.
They're more local, exactly. We didn't have any local games in Lincoln, really. So Peterborough for me. And plus we want revenge for that Sammy Schmoddick's awful dive that he did to get them promoted, 2 years ago. So, I mean, it's difficult because we like playing the top teams. But I'd like to keep Wednesday and Ipswich about purely just so I can,
I disagree. I quite like them gone. I'm fed up of losing 4-0 to them.
Well,
they can go as far as I'm concerned.
You need to get better. That's what you need.
We just beat you, mate. That's all we do. We just beat Lincoln. Sam Stew's always scoring.
So, yeah, wow. I mean, it's difficult, Ed, but sorry, Kai, it's difficult, but we'll never beat Bolton. I can't see. The only time we beat Bolton in recent memory for me was when you had a team full of kids and we beat you 5-1.
Everyone beat them. If that Bolton didn't beat them.
If you can play the team, that might be a bit of a leveller.
Harry Toffolo, that was Harry Toffolo's last game for Lincoln, and I had a bit of a cry afterwards because he came out and did a bit of a wave. But that goes back to what I was saying before about Derby. Like we'd just come out of that kind of lull as a club, and I think they're very fortunate that they've been able to kind of recruit a lot better than we did. I think we signed like Liam Bridcut and stuff like that, players of that nature. Yeah, sorry.
As part of that though, I think Derby's was done before the season was up, wasn't it? Whereas Bolton's had
we take
a wrap before the ball started. Yeah,
exactly that. Yeah, but I mean they should count themselves lucky that they've managed to get the recruitment sorted, and obviously they've started a bit of a fresh really.
Absolutely. Cole, before we finish up, just talk to us about the Fan Zone podcast, what you do and where people can find you.
Yeah, thanks very much. We're pretty new, to be honest with you. We've started towards the back end of last year. We've noticed there's a bit of a gap in the market for Wanderers fans in terms of the different podcasts. A couple of others have dropped off, and yeah, we're doing all right. Every Sunday evening, we just record one podcast a week after the game on the Saturday. So if it's obviously a Saturday, it's a Sunday 7:30, or if it's a Tuesday, it's a Wednesday at 7:30 generally. We're enjoying ourselves. We've got Angela and Ben. Angela's a representative of.
I've got to get her name right next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What do you call her instead of Angela?
I think I called her Claire.
Claire, yeah, you did. Yeah.
Gav, that's so weird. That's the name of my mum and her identical twin. That is so weird.
Well, maybe that's what it was.
I'm just trying to work out how you get Angela and Claire mixed up. That's
you
got yourself all excited, I think. No, but she's part of her game too, and she does a really good job with that as well, and stuff. And yeah, we're doing well, and we enjoy ourselves, and we have a good chat. So be good to get you guys on in the future, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly loving the time on Fan Zone last time, so be good to go on again. Listen, Cole, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Likewise for our regular guests, Jake from the Stacey West podcast and Ed Walker from D3D4 Football Podcast.
Thank you.
What a podcast that is.
Absolutely cracking stuff. This has been EFL Debate, the League One podcast. We'll see you again very soon.
Cheers.